Welcome to the Library is Open podcast, the official podcast of Bywater Solutions, where we discuss all things libraries and open source. Today, our special guests are Christopher Brannon and George Williams. Enjoy the show. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Library is Open podcast, where I have some very special guests today. You may recognize them from the Every Other Thursday, it's a tongue twister, the terrific Every Other Thursday videos. It is Christopher Brannon and George Williams. Welcome, y'all.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
I suppose I should say I'm George.
That would make me Christopher.
Excellent. Thank you for clarifying. Well, we are so excited to have you on today because there's some very exciting things going on in the Koha world, obviously. So we're going to get into that. But first, just because everybody likes to get to know our guests, I'm going to ask you both a little bit about your foray into the library world. How did you both get into libraries? And I will start with you, George.
Well, I used to be a bus driver. So that's the short version. So my dad died when I was about 19 or 20, and I dropped out of college, and I ended up doing a bunch of weird different jobs for about 6 or 7 years. And the last one, and one that I had for the longest time, is I worked for this transportation company. It was airport shuttle, taxi, and buses. And I'd gotten married, and I'd gotten to this point in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that I didn't want to be driving a bus every day. So I decided to go back to college, and we ended up, I went back to college right when my wife graduated, and we ended up moving to Boise for a job for her. And I went to Boise State, and I applied for financial aid, and they gave me a work study money, and I ended up working at the library. And then a while later, I ended up at Boise Public Library just as a shelver. And one day I casually mentioned to the circulation supervisor, Laurel White, I said, "Oh yeah, I've got a Class B commercial driver's license." And she kind of grabbed me by the neck and stuck me on the bookmobile. And I ended up being the full-time bookmobile driver there for about 4 years. And that was kind of it. It was a great, there are a lot of great things about libraries. I like working with Koha. I like working in circulation. I even like doing reference work. But nothing compares to driving a bookmobile and going out. And, when you're on the bookmobile and you go to a stop, every Wednesday you're at the same spot, and you are the library for all of the people that come to the bookmobile. And at Christmas time, there is so much free baked goods. Driving the bookmobile was one of the best jobs I've ever had in my life. And then I ended up from there, it just, that ended up being what I wanted to do. So that's how I got to Koha is another long story, but that's how I started in the libraries. Was work study led me to the bookmobile, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have been a bus driver. So,
How many years have you been in the library now?
That first work study job, that was in 1996. So it's been a while.
Wow.
And it was about 4 years before that. I drove from Moscow, Idaho to Spokane, Washington, 5 days a week for about 4.5 years. And Christopher knows what that road's like. It's, if you do it every day for 4.5 years, that's a lot of nothing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful nothing. I mean, it's just rolling hills, and there's a couple towns you go through, but it's grain fields and Pullman, Washington. You go from Moscow to Pullman. So you start at the University of Idaho, you go through Washington State University, and then you go through Colfax, and then you're in Spokane. So it's really kind of a letdown. Each step of the way is kind of someplace less enjoyable.
Do you have a favorite memory from that time of being a bookmobile operator?
I have a lot of there's so many good memories. I have a picture somewhere of my wife pushing our daughter, who was probably a year old at the time, in the stroller, and my boss and a couple of volunteers for the bookmobile, all of us going down the road in the 4th of July parade in Boise. That was a really fun activity. And I have a lot of good memories from driving the bookmobile. So
That's so awesome. I have a soft spot for bookmobiles because that was my first library experience as a kid. So I just think it's such a great way to bring it to the community and make it more accessible. So that's
yeah,
awesome. Thank you for doing that for so long. Some treacherous roads, it sounds like. And all right, well then with that, I'm going to turn it over to Christopher. Why don't you tell us about your journey into the library world?
Mine isn't as impressive. I had been transitioning from one job to a temporary job back in 2003, and yeah, my longest job at the time had been 9 years. I had to stop that, and I had to move completely out of town, and so my temporary job before the library was working the graveyard shift on the freight team for Home Depot. That was fun, really out of my element. But I didn't want to stay there. I'd been there for 6 months total, but during that time, I decided I was going to put in some applications elsewhere to see if there was something better, because I was of no use to my family during that time. So I stopped at the local library and was putting in applications online, and I thought, oh, I'm just gonna, well, they've got computers here and I have computer skills, so I thought I'd leave a resume. And yeah, they weren't looking for anybody at the time. I don't know how long it was later, but eventually the I don't know what her title was, but a gal at the library reached out to me and actually was interested in interviewing me for the position that they were trying to turn around. So they brought me in, I did an interview and got the job. I was excited about it and couldn't quit Home Depot fast enough. But yeah, and unfortunately, all those people that were a part of the interview are no longer here at the library. It's been, in fact, today I just had my evaluation for my 20th year. I'm now 20 years into this job, and yeah, I love it just as much as the day that I started. The job is nothing like what it was when I first signed on, and yeah, I love it. I just went to Hawaii and I was disappointed that their libraries didn't have Koha, because it's like, that would be the only thing that would say to me, oh, I could get in a library over there and I would have the best of both worlds. But no, I'm staying here because I like my job here.
so they don't have Koha, but they still call it Paradise. There's a disconnect there.
They need to be convinced.
Yeah, maybe one day we can dream, right? Well, that is an equally impressive journey into the library world. Thank you for sharing that. And I always think it's interesting when people have, such diverse backgrounds. And I think, especially coming from a retail environment, it gives you a unique perspective when you start working in libraries, because I've worked at bookstores and restaurants. And so I don't know, I think it just gives you that unique perspective. And I still shop at Home Depot all the time to this day. So
It's not even my background in education, because my degree is in music education.
oh wow.
I really took another path after. I did teach for 9 years, but not in music, surprisingly.
Interesting. What's your favorite instrument or your specialty?
Well, the instrument I played was trombone,
Oh,
but I could play most of the instruments in the band, but no, the trombone was mine. I started off on piano and I couldn't stand that.
That's so cool. Well, I'm sure a lot of our listeners will be amazed to learn that. You're a trombone aficionado.
Well,
Well,
it's weird too at the Koha Conference in Monterey, which with what that was like 2016. You know, Christopher plays the trombone. I played the baritone horn and the tuba, but I also played the trombone. And I think we figured, I think Brendan from I think he's from a library in New York. He plays the trombone. We figured out that we had 4 people that all played the trombone. So I said we should try and do a quartet at the next conference, but it's never worked out.
man, y'all got to make that happen one day. We need the Koha brass band. To be
Yeah, I don't remember who I remember it was you, me, and Brendan and somebody else all played the trombone, but I don't remember who else there was.
Been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since that must 2016, so that was 7 years ago.
Wow. It's not too late to dream. It could still happen one day. I'm sure there's more people that have joined the library world that are trombone players. We get a band going. But speaking of open source and all things Koha, could you each tell us a little bit about how specifically you got involved in the world of Koha and maybe some of the roles you've taken on with Koha-US in the past few years and what's that has looked like for you?
We actually jumped into this together, sort of. We were both part of a larger consortium in our region. Their consortium, our consortium, was part of a grander consortium based out of a university. We were
well, and this is when you know, I've since moved on to a different job. This was when I was working at the Latah County Library District in Moscow, Idaho, and I'm in Lawrence, Kansas now at Northeast Kansas Library System. So
right, but
so that was in, what was that? That was
2012.
Yeah, 2012 when the Valnet Consortium migrated to Koha and Christopher's consortium, CIN, Cooperative Information Network, migrated to Koha.
Yeah, I don't, in fact, I don't know. I can't remember what transpired to get you guys on board with Koha, because I know I had done the research for our consortium and we decided that Koha was the direction that we wanted to go. But I don't know what convinced you guys.
For Valnet, it was 90% of it was money, because at the time there was a consortium, and I think that they still exist, but the Washington Idaho Network, and it included Gonzaga University and the Spokane Falls Community Colleges and Whitworth and the North Idaho Academic Libraries and CIN and Valnet. And we were all using the same ILS, and it was administered by the Washington Idaho Network, which was headquartered at Gonzaga University. And the price of that software kept going up. It was a proprietary system, and I don't like to name it because it's like Voldemort in the Harry Potter books. It was something I was never happy with, and it wasn't really built for public libraries, and it didn't do what we wanted it to do, and it was just a pain to work with. And
when it went down, it was down for days.
Yeah. When it was time to do an upgrade, it took 3 days to do a software upgrade. Yeah, you've got a look of shock, but that was typical, because part of the issue was that this big consortium, the Washington Idaho Network of Libraries, was it was a financial strain on everybody to work with this software, and they were paying for the base level of customer support. And so to do an upgrade, we would Washington Idaho Network would coordinate with the headquarters in Chicago, and so it was Pacific time on our end, and it was Central time on the Chicago end. And so they would say, we're going to do an upgrade, so we'll start, the people in Chicago were ready to go at 8 in the morning on a Tuesday to do an upgrade. Well, the people at Gonzaga that had to manage that, they didn't get to work until 8 o'clock Pacific time. So the upgrade would go from 10 until noon. And then the people in Chicago would take a lunch break and all work would stop. And then it would go on for like another hour or so. And then it'd be time for the people in Spokane to take a lunch break. And then they'd come back from lunch, they work for another hour. And then the people in Chicago would go, well, it's time for us to go home. And so there'd only be like about 4 hours worth of work done on the upgrade. And it was a lot of moving parts. And so it took them 3 days to get all the work done. Usually about halfway through Thursday, they'd call us up and say, we're good to go now. It was the bottom line, I know, at the time was a lot of it had to do with money, because the price of this software that everybody in Valnet hated was going up and up and up. And the Valnet Consortium, when I started working at Latah County Library District in 2006, Valnet had 52 members. And by the time we migrated, we had 49 members, because some of the members couldn't afford to pay the licensing fee for the software. That's why they dropped out, was because it was financially, it kept going up and there was no way they could stay in. And the Valnet directors kind of said, if we keep using this software, we're going to go from being a consortium that had been together since the 1980s to being a bunch of separate libraries again. And Koha, the cost of Koha is what made that possible to keep it together.
And then there was the fun fact that they were going to charge us to get all our data.
Yes.
So we ended up writing reports and extracting all that stuff ourselves.
Yes, at the time, in 2012, Ruth Babisette worked for Bywater, and she was the migrations lead. And so Ruth would call me on the phone and say, I'm sending you an email that has a report in it, run that, and then put the data in Dropbox, and I'll look at it and call you back. And so I would run the report, and she would call me back and say, okay, we're going to change this line in the SQL, and then run it again and put it in Dropbox, and then I'll call you back. And so we did that for about 3 months until we had all the queries right, so that we didn't have to pay. It was going to cost, the company that managed this software wanted to charge us $10,000 just for the bibliographic data, just to do an extract. And the extract was going to happen months before the migration. So it wasn't going to be clean, fresh data. It was going to be data that was old. And that was all it was going to be, bibliographic and item data. It wasn't going to have any patron data. It wasn't going to have any holds. It wasn't going to have any current checkouts. It was just going to be the MARC data. And it was going to cost us $10,000. And instead, we just did it all with Microsoft Access.
Ingenuity right there.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was a lot. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to jump into something really quick, but it is still related to Koha. But Christopher's background is reminding me of this. So explore the possibilities. That is the theme of the, he can do his little Vanna White thing. That is the theme of, woo, of the Koha-US Conference next week. So could you maybe talk a little more about that? And by the time people will be listening to this, it will be the week of. So I know there's some online participation options, but just tell us a little bit more about what people can expect, what's going on, anything you want to talk about.
Yeah, so we're in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, from September 20th through the 23rd, and really excited to be there. That's an area of the country that we hadn't explored yet, and we have a great turnout. I'm really excited because we had, when we have done our hybrid conferences in the past, I don't think that we've had the turnout that we have now, except for when we did the joint Koha Con last year, and we expected bigger numbers with that. But for this to be just ourselves, we've got over 250 people registered for this conference. We've got 67 that are going to be there in person. We're really excited. We have some great presentations. We've really diversified the presentations, and we've tried to hone these presentations over the years to get away from some of the comforts that people are used to with their presentations. We're trying to branch people out. We've pushed. I've helped the group push for themes. I feel like the themes for conferences help people and inspire people with their presentations, and I think we have a great batch of presentations this year. In fact, I'm on the docket for a couple on my own, and then I'm working with George on one, and then
is that next week?
Yes, it is. So I feel like this year we're trying to well, I think any year we're trying to expand people's horizon on Koha and help them to branch out of their comfort zones and learn some new things. We're trying to hone some of our presentations for newcomers, because we wanted to really be able to be a place for onboarding people that are new to Koha, because what Koha-US is a hub for everybody to learn more. We want to make sure that all the resources, we're pointing people to all the good resources for Koha-US, whether you're starting out or doing more advanced things. So we try to cater to both worlds, those that are trying to understand what Koha can do and accomplish, but also where we can go beyond out of the box. So George, you have anything to add?
I would just say that the most important thing about Koha, the thing that I like the most about Koha, as much as I like the software, it's the community. The Koha community is what makes Koha great. So being able to, go and actually talk to the other people that are using Koha and be in the same room with them is it's a lot of fun, and you learn a lot at the Koha conferences, whether it's the Koha-US Conference or the International Conference. There's a lot to be learned, but as much as there is to be learned, and as great as the software is, just meeting the other people that are using it, that everybody's working towards the same goals usually. That's, I think, the biggest and most important part of the Koha conference, is just meeting the other people in the community.
That actually touches on, something I was planning to say there, and I can say here too, is that, Koha, itself really isn't the software. Koha is just the end result of this community coming together and working on an idea to bring about better software for the library. And so you see the result of what Koha is, but Koha isn't the code, in my opinion. Koha is this community. So
that was beautiful. I always say this in every episode, somebody always gives me all the feels, and both of you just gave me all the feels with that. I mean, it really is about the community. I love that. That should be a shirt, not the code, the community. I think we're gonna brand that.
Yeah.
So on Koha-US's thread.
Copyright Christopher Brannon.
Yeah, copyright Christopher Brannon 2023.
Yeah, of all the Koha things, that's the one you want to copyright,
Yeah, you should copyright that right now before Bywater steals it.
No.
No, thank you both so much. I think that's really going to get people pumped up about this, and maybe raise some awareness for future conferences and other events that are going on. And then just real quick before we close it out, how can people follow you and your terrific every other Thursday videos and all that fun stuff?
We share our videos on our website at koha-us.org. You can find our videos there, and I believe those are under the Learn menu.
Yeah. If you go to koha-us.org and click on, there's a drop down that says Learn, and then there's one that says Video Playlists. But I think you can also find them another way, right?
Yes, if you go to youtube.com/Koha-US with no hyphen, you'll find all the videos for Koha-US, and we have a playlist specific to our videos, and you can subscribe to that playlist so you get notified anytime we update the site. In fact, we will be streaming our conference from that channel as well. So the folks that are online will mostly participate through those streams that are going to be available.
Cool. Awesome. That's sort of two great ways to get plugged in. And yeah, we look forward to, I will not be in New Hampshire, so I will be streaming in as well. So looking forward to that. But yeah, there's so many great I'm just looking at the YouTube channel. I've never really fully looked at this, and there's a lot here.
Virtually every meeting that Koha-US holds, whether it's a special interest group, like there's a circulation group that meets monthly, there's a cataloging group that meets monthly, but almost all of those meetings are recorded and saved on the YouTube channel. The Koha-US, the first time we did a video, like an online component to our conference, was there were recordings made of the conference in Coeur d'Alene at your library in 2017. But we've gotten better at it. But all the way from 2017 on, you can see the recordings of all of our conferences from the past.
And surprisingly enough, it isn't the presentations or hosting or any of that stuff that stresses me out. It's the hybrid part of it, trying to coordinate that and stream it. That's what has me nervous about these conferences. But I love these conferences. I mean, I look forward to them every single year.
So awesome. Well, we're really looking forward to this one and can't wait to see what everybody presents and all the pictures and fun stuff from that. So once again, I just want to say thank you both so much for joining us today on the Library is Open podcast. And we'll make sure to share all those links that you shared in the description and all that. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode. For more information, please visit librariesopen.com.